your shares to be on the YouTube feed. So
Okay. Okay.
so feel free to take control. I'll go on mute and then I'll watch the chat if there's any questions, and I'll chime in if there's any comments.
Okay. Can can you see my screen now? And can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm not. Did you do the share screen thing?
I did. Okay, let me check.
Yeah, try it again.
Ah, wrong one.
No problem.
Okay. Oh, okay. There's two buttons. Okay.
Yep. Looks like it's coming up.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff today. And you guys, it's so awesome to hear what you all have been doing. Because I'm coming to living in a void here, especially this week with all the smoke. Okay, so all of the things I'm going to talk about today are going to be boosted if you have your platform in place. But if you don't worry about it. Just take deep breaths and follow along. And we are going to have questions throughout. Basically, before you even think about a book launch, there's a lot of stuff you need to have set up. So none of this is easy, and all of this is time consuming. So you're not going to have it all set up for your first book unless you're, crazy and incredibly energetic. The website needs to be done. You need to have a presence on the web that is yours, that you can advertise your books on, that you can have a bio on, you can have links to your books, all of that stuff, and an email sign up for your newsletter. The email provider, that's another thing you need to get set up. A reader magnet that you can send out to people. If those of you who don't know what a reader magnet is, it's basically something that you give away to people as an enticement to send to sign up for your email. Basically, you can use it. You can use it chapters of your book. You can use a short story. You can use things that are backstory or research that you did for your book. It doesn't have to be a novel, but if you've got a bunch of novels out, sometimes people use their first novel as a as a as a reader magnet. It just depends on where you're at in your career. But Matt has a whole graphic about all this, and he talks about it. He shows it every time he does a presentation, and I'm sure he has one coming up. So, but launches, this is what you need to do when you are planning a book launch. That's something that you do down the road. It's not something that most people are ready to do with their first book unless they've got their platform completely set up. Now this is, and I want you guys to rethink about the way that you think about what a book launch is. It begins when you start getting people to try to buy your book, not when you publish. You can do your platform stuff first, but you can launch a book anytime. You can launch a book that you released, that you published 5 years ago. I'm gonna talk a little bit about 5 different types of launches. The influencer launch, the list launch, the bestseller launch, long game launch, the stealth launch. The stealth launch is what you do until you have everything set up. People have called me the queen of the stealth launches because I basically publish something every single month, and I don't talk about most of them. I publish a short story or a collection of short stories or a boxed set. I talk about the big things like when I release a novel or when I release a box set, but the rest of it I don't generally talk about because really nobody wants to hear from me 5 times, every single month. I don't want to wear people out with news about me. Um, the first three launches that you're looking at here are those are the common ones that traditional publishing houses do. And it depends on the book, it depends on the writer, it depends on what kind of a platform they've got. When when traditional publishing is releasing your book, your book has 1 to 2 weeks to get their books in the bestseller lists and to get out into bookstores and to get in people's hands before it vanishes completely. 30 days, you know, 30 days after it's out, it starts disappearing from shelves as it goes back to remainders and sits in warehouses. And, maybe people might order it on Amazon, maybe not, but pretty much they have 1 to 2 weeks. Um, you guys have a lot longer than that if you're indie publishing, which is amazing. Um, Now, the bestseller launch, we're talking about people who hit the bestseller lists every time they publish. Stephen King, James Patterson, Nora Roberts, Danielle Steele, people like that. You know, and there are indies who do this too. Hugh Howey, well, I don't know if Hugh Howey is anymore, but there are some. Mark Dawson does. I would guess he hits the bestseller lists. There are a lot of them. I don't know most of their names, um, because fantasy people don't often hit the bestseller lists. And that's where my knowledge is. But a lot of the romance writers hit the bestseller list every time they bring another book out. Um, so you may get there, and you may at some point have this kind of huge platform to leverage. An influencer launch, these are people who know other people with huge media platforms. And to they're people who are connected with, if you knew Oprah, she has a huge platform. there there's a lot of influencers out there in the world, and they're geared towards different markets. So that's something to think about if you've got a serious in with one platform. A list launch, these are people who are huge on social media. They've spent all their energy getting that social media, which doesn't mean that they're not great writers. And they also have they have an okay mailing list. They tend to be charismatic and extroverted and sometimes hip. They are media darlings. I'm going to give you an example of Neil Gaiman. He came out decades ago with the Sandman comic series, graphic novels, and that was a really hip thing to do, but it wasn't intensely popular. And then he followed it up with, so he started writing more more traditional fiction. And he came out with Neverwhere, which got turned into a TV show. And he came out with the Graveyard Book, which won a Newbery, which and Neil has always been very outright about his love of libraries, and the Newbery is awarded by librarians. And then he made a very savvy move, and I'm sure it was not calculated as a savvy move, but he got married to Amanda Palmer, who also has a huge social media presence. And now he's just the hippest thing. And yeah, I can't even imagine the size of a footprint when he launches a book.
Linda, how much
Yeah.
does marrying famous people fit into your launch plan?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't managed to do that, but that was pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. I can't think of anybody else who's done quite that, but I mean, clearly they're in love, but yeah, they have a kid. it doesn't seem like a temporary relationship. It's his second marriage, but I just thought it was really interesting because I watched his platform explode when that happened. Um, so, and this is for the rest of us. The rest of us, I want you to think of, instead of 2 weeks to have your book to 2 weeks to promote your book, you have a whole year. You don't have to hit everybody in the first week. You do, and most of us don't have connection with the type of influencers that would launch a huge list, would do a lot of promotion for us. Some of us may or may not have an email platform. Most of us don't have more than 10,000 social media contacts. Some of us have a whole lot less, like me. And not because I don't spend time on social media. It's just that I don't tend to do the types of things that gain followers. So I'm going to go through two of these so you can see the comparison on what is involved. So this is the big bonanza. If were Stephen King or James Patterson or Danielle Steele or Nora Roberts. And these are huge. And they start 7 to 9 months before the publication date. And this is a long process. And notice the bottom one where it says decide on launch team strategy. That means they have a team of people to make this happen. They have a huge publicity and marketing team. That's what big publishers do. And tell me to slow down if I'm going too fast. There's a huge amount of stuff here. The media kit, that was what Tony talked about. And that media kit is not just a general media kit about the writer. It's specific to this book. People are writing stuff about this book that is being launched. The blurb and getting all the graphics together for the covers. And then you have to create all the graphics for to share on social media that you're going to send out to everybody. There's just a huge amount of stuff to do, and it's every single month. This is a full-time job. And the one thing about a plan is that something's always going to go wrong, and you need to work with it and have fun, because it's otherwise life is misery. And just because the book has been launched doesn't mean it's over. You need to do all the thank yous, and you need to figure out what went wrong and what went right so that you can use it next time. Now, I looked at this list and it made my head spin. I just kind of looked at it and went, I can't do that. Or I don't want to do that. And yeah, this is when you can hire people to help that you plan this kind of launch. And you don't have to be a bestseller to do it, but you need to have enough money coming in from your books, either that or be independently wealthy, that you can put out the kind of money to hire good people to help you. And if you're one of those people who's on social media all the time saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, people are just going to turn you off. Social media doesn't work to sell books in that way. But I'm going to talk about how it does work to sell books. So you've all seen those lists of how to launch a book. and they're massive, and they include some of the things that traditional bestsellers do, and some of the things that the other two types of traditional publishing launches do, but they're not going to get you many results because you don't have that platform. And I want to talk to you about what will get you results, I hope. So we're gonna talk about the long game strategy. Um, First of all, I need you to adjust your timeline and think about a year, and think about pacing it out. So you do 2 things every week to sell your book, and they want to fall into those first 3 categories up there, which is getting influencers to promote your book to their followers and sell to their fans and get your fans to share. And it helps a lot if you can get 6 influencers who have a social media following of 10,000 people to share your book and to promote your book, as opposed to you who might have 10,000 people. It's much less work for a lot more gain if you're hitting 60,000 people by working with the influencers. Okay, this is the way that I want you to start thinking about your book. I want you to think about personas, about who's going to read your book, and figure out everything you can about them. And like say your book is on your readers are going to hang out on Facebook in a group of, say, horror readers. You want to find out who the gatekeepers are of those places, who's running those groups, and figure out something that will benefit them and you at the same time, and have that media kit in hand. If you can't remember what's in the media kit, the slides are up on the members thing page, and you can go look at what Tony talked about media kits, and follow through with that. Find out how it worked. Find out what you could do better. Find out how you could help the influencers out. I'm going to give you an example about YA fiction. There's 2 easy audiences here: teens and women ages 25 to 55, who actually read more young adult fiction than teens do. For teens, the influencers are going to be libraries and teachers and librarians. And you search for listings of local schools and libraries. I don't know how well this strategy is going to work during the pandemic. It depends on if your libraries are open and to what degree they're open, and if your schools are open, which they're not really. So school libraries may not be a useful thing during the pandemic, but afterwards, people are going to be happy to be back in school. Kids are going to be happy. Well, maybe more than online, at least. So this is a really interesting strategy. I would not have thought of this, but it's not what I would normally do to promote young adult fiction. But I'm going to look at it and think about it really hard next time I have something that fits that category. And this is how you try to sell. This is how you try to sell books on social media, is by connecting with influencers instead of trying to connect with readers. Trying to connect with readers is great. And I know, like Tony, that's the thing that she loves to do. And that's fabulous. But she would also gain a little more traction by including influencers in this group. And I know she's been working really hard at doing that, at connecting with different groups. And it'll be interesting to see what that does for the sales of her new book. But all of us need to save some time and energy with all of the marketing and publishing stuff so that we have more time to write, basically. So I know Matt can attest to this, that, podcasts are always looking for people to talk. And writers who can talk are, well, that's not the majority of us. The majority of us are introverts, and we're not real great online and verbally. So those people who are, wow, make use of that. So basically, I would say publish, write your stuff and publish so that you have content. And then worry about what you're going to do to market it later. So that is where I am at. I'm ready for questions.
I have a quick question. Linda, when you do a launch of a new book or a new series, I know you had a series you launched last year with the Seattle stories, and you got kind of into doing launches.
Yeah.
If somebody was doing something new, or like Tamara was talking about, maybe launching an anthology, maybe walk through everybody what you typically do on a launch and how long you think, how long you plan for that launch, whether it's a month, 2 months, 3 months ahead of time.
Okay.
Walk people through what you do.
Okay. I planned for that one, I was releasing 5 books. And I wrote all 5 books before I released the first one, because I wanted to make sure that I had the books written, because it was all one big long story, and I wanted to make sure that by the time I got to the end that the first book hadn't changed, or that I didn't need to put stuff in the first book to seed back in. And so I finished them later than I would have liked, but I finished them probably about 4 months before I had planned on releasing the first one. And I had decided that I was going to try the big bonanza. I was going to try to hit really large on Amazon. So I put I decided to put them in KU. I decided to release one a month. And because I do all my own covers, that's what slowed me down. And I was waiting for copy editing, and one of my and the person who was copy editing got very, very ill and had to bail in the middle of it, which left me either scrambling to find a copy editor or copy editing myself, which meant that I had to do that. And I didn't want to scramble for a copy editor, and I didn't want to be at their mercy. So I just buckled down and threw the writing out the window and spent that time copy editing. So the first things that I did was I did a thing where I because my newsletter list is readers across the board. They buy at Barnes and Noble, they buy at Kobo, they buy at Apple. I decided that I would offer them the chance to buy each book for 99 cents off of my website, essentially, or off of a company called PayHip, before I put it up on Amazon. So I gave them a 2-week window. I said, the book's here, you can buy it. And it was kind of a experiment on my part, and I didn't sell many copies, but I was hoping to get a few early reviews in advance. I did set up pre-orders on Amazon. That was a good idea. And I wasn't concerned about it because I was about missing the pre-order date, because I was wedded to releasing on the 15th of every month. And so what I did was I didn't want to mess with uploading the wrong book. So because Amazon's had problems when people upload don't upload the real book at the beginning when they first upload it for a pre-order. And so I made sure that when that pre-order needed to be uploaded, that it was the real book. And um, essentially, the first one I did paid newsletter promotions. So I promoted on I set up 3 per week of the first week that the books were available. And I was probably using Bargain Booksy and Book Gorilla and Book Barbarian, because those seem to be the best for fantasy. And I I would do first. I'd start off with one of the larger ones, which was probably Book Gorilla, and then the next day I would post on both my Facebook pages, my private and my public one, that the book was out. Then I might then the next day might be the third day might be the Bargain Booksy. Then the fourth day I would send my newsletter out and say, hey, the book's up for sale on Amazon. And then the fifth day was maybe Bargain Booksy. I mean, sorry, Book Gorilla. And so that I was doing something every day. And this was Matt's idea. This was Matt's plan, and I followed it. And it was pretty successful. Partly because people could see that there were pre-orders for the next several books. And I also, in the back of each book, I had a link, because I had a pre-order up for the next book. I already had the page link so when I published the first one, so I could link to the sales page for the second book when I published the first book. And that seemed to help a lot. That's pretty much what I did for each of the books. And as soon as the pre-order went live, or about a few hours before the pre-order went live, I would take the book off of PayHip, so it was no longer available, so that it didn't interfere with KU's rules. That was pretty much what I did. Does that make sense to anybody?
Yes, it did. How much did maybe I missed it. How much did you use your newsletter to kind of stoke interest and reviews and things of that nature?
Well, I did talk about it for probably a couple of the previous months, but before it came out, and talked about where I was getting the idea of the series, and what about it was thrilling to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I my newsletter followers at this point are not really great um on reviews. I do have a read and review team of like 29 people, but they're not as active as I would like them to be, for whatever reason. I don't know if it's life or if it's that they hate the books, but I don't think it's because they hate the books. But they just don't seem to get reviews up in it, or Amazon is pulling them. I don't know what, but so I don't feel that I'm doing that effectively at this point in time.
Yeah, I'm having the similar problem with the ARC team, but I think that's kind of a general problem that most people have, and it takes a while just to build your newsletter and then also to build a good ARC team. I think it just takes as
Yeah.
much time.
Yeah, and it is because I'm it's because I'm every year I've been going through and saying, does anybody want to join the team? And I get
Mm.
one or two people. And that's I think that's helpful, but I need to I'm working on reformatting my newsletter and rebuilding. I need to start soon rebuilding my newsletter constituency, whatever, the number of people on it. And I'm not sure how I'm gonna do that differently. So I haven't done anything about that yet. I'm still setting it up on a new platform. So we'll see how that works out. I haven't figured out a better way to find newsletter people than giving away free stuff, but they don't seem to be. I'm not pleased with the buying that happens, or the lack of buying that, and lack of reviews that happen. So I, yeah, that's a whole
So,
nother topic though.
so we had a question from Andy. Linda, did you publish both digital and hard copy format when you did your series? And is there different launch strategies for each?
I used the same launch strategy, but I did do paperbacks, yes, because I was doing a lot of events last summer and spring, and I wanted to have books to sell and paper books to sell, and that helped a lot. I did notice that in my events last year that because I had 5 books, or was in the middle of publishing 5 books, that there was a lot more purchases, and it was and even though I probably had 12 or 13 or 14 or 15, no, I had like 16 or 17 books out already that I was carting around and selling. But those additional 5 books in the series, and because it was semi-local, that was a real sales point. And last year, post-apocalyptic was really hot. This year it's dead. I hope it will revive again because I'd like to sell more of those books. But and I really love the series. I really love the story. Um, but so I I didn't have a different launch strategy other than it was just different at events because I had a new series to sell, and I could sell it. And dragons.
There's a question from Diana. She says, "What advice do you have for somebody who's already launched a 5 book series, stealthily launched one, so not letting anyone know?" Her concern is right now she hasn't done much promotion because she wants to make sure her covers, blurbs, and ads are all dialed in before she goes. Is there
Yeah.
any comment
And
you
I
can say
think
there?
and I think that's great. I think that this is a hugely difficult time to sell books right now. Um, because of the pandemic, because of politics, and any year there's an election year, especially if it's and this year we're having an especially ugly election year where people are afraid. People don't open their wallets. And if things were normal, this would be a great time to start publicizing and getting the word out and doing all that. But this year, I'd say it's not a problem. Um, it's normally if we have an election and things go well, in other words, readers feel safe, they feel like the future's secure, they feel like the economy's secure, they're going to start opening their wallets around mid-November. I don't think that's going to be the case no matter who wins, because we're in the middle of a pandemic. Um, and so I don't even know if Christmas is going to be good, even if it's the best case scenario, whatever that is for the election. So I would say, my advice to Diana would be to, um, I would take this time to get everything together. Get your blurbs, get your publicity material written, get your websites, shinied up, and your newsletter. Start with a newsletter. And I would start publicizing when things are looking good again. If we have a vaccine that's actually gonna happen, like they're talking about mid next year. if we have a vaccine, that's going to open a lot of stuff up. And granted, people won't be sitting at home reading, but I think that if the economy surges forward, that might be a good time. If if everybody in the nation got some sort of financial relief, that might be a good time. I can't tell you when a good time is going to be, but basically it's really hard right now. And Tony's doing the most amazing things. I mean, she's bucking the trend because she just released a book this week, and because she was coming up on a deadline for the anniversary of the Mayflower. And so um, if anybody's going to sell books this year, it's going to be Tony. But I can tell you that it's not me. I sold books in June when I released the third book in a series, and it's a gardening murder mystery, cozy mystery, and it was really feel good and stuff. But it was spring. Everybody wanted to be outside in their garden. Um, the because the whole gardening world exploded this spring because that was the only place people felt safe, was being outside. And the nurseries are sold out. The mail order nurseries were sold out because they were open. Everybody was out gardening. um they all had an amazing year, but now we're moving into fall and gardening books are not selling. So anyway, next question.
All right, just to piggyback on what you said, I think this is a brand building time. This is a
Mm-hmm.
product building time. This is a writing time. Getting your series in order, getting audiobooks made if you have some time to do that. Getting all your ducks in a row would be a good time right now. And then building your newsletter using a lot of the list building tools that we've talked about, Story Origin, Book Funnel, things of that nature is a good time now to build that, you know, build your little community. It's a good time to, engage with influencers like Linda said, get those people, get into those communities, start answering questions, making friends, and leveraging relationships so that when things maybe do improve, that you're ready for that. So I think it's just a preparation time, and also, practice launching.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you can't, spend $50 on a promo and, launch to your list to get practice on doing that for when maybe things do turn on, gangbusters again. So,
And
yeah, go
someone
ahead.
talked about writing too.
Yeah.
And this is I've been struggling on and off and on all year with writing, just because of chaos. But those people who are writing right now, you are doing the awesome thing, because next year you're going to have stuff to publish when the readers come back. Hopefully the readers are going to come back. um, you're going to have stuff to publish, and those folks of us who are struggling like me, well, it's going to be ugly. So I'm that's a fabulous thing. I'm still working on it. Anyway, next question.
Um, I don't know if we have any other. Does anyone else have a question you want to put in the chat, or do you want to just come off mute and ask Linda directly? That'd be great. Does anyone have any questions, maybe on some specific topic or technology that maybe Linda mentioned, that you're not unfamiliar with? We had a couple questions on social media and influencers.
This is Tamara. I'm really curious where the best, like, is Instagram like a really good place? Which of the social media places are really the best place to inhabit while you're
Okay.
trying to get your book out there? Thanks.
Okay. What I would do is I would Google Instagram demographics or social media demographics, and they will give you a list of the social media platforms and who hangs out there, in terms of ages and genders. And that way you can kind of key into what's going to work for you. I can't remember what genre you're writing in. What are you writing, Tamara?
Oh, it's the book that I have coming out is a poetry. It's a hybrid collection. It's nonfiction poetry.
Okay. So, nonfiction poetry?
Yeah, it's hybrid. It's also literary. It's 5 years of living with multiple sclerosis, written in poetry and flash nonfiction.
Okay. Okay.
Experimental in the sense, yeah.
Oh, cool. So you're going to have a built-in audience there of people who are struggling with MS.
Yes, I
Um,
actually do have I have the American Association of Multiple Sclerosis. They have a page that they're gonna set up for me. So I actually have a charity that I'm gonna
cool.
donate to that's gonna help too. So thank goodness.
Cool. That's awesome. That's one connection. Um, Somebody suggested Facebook groups on MS groups on Facebook. I don't know what age group it's geared towards. Instagram tends to be younger, but not necessarily. Um, because MS hits people in all ages. I
That's
would,
I was
I,
gonna say MS. It's interesting. It's a young person's chronic illness, so that makes sense. That would actually be appealing then, I think.
right.
Interesting. I didn't think about that.
So,
Okay.
you might because the demographics are generally when they look at the social media with demographics, they're generally there are age group there are overlaps in terms of ages, but pretty much you can tell, that this age group hangs out here, this age group hangs out here, so I would Google that, but I would also I would also consider whether your book is gender oriented or not. I don't know who reads poetry most. I don't know who reads literary most, but find that out. Whether it's male or female, and see if that informs anything about what social media platform you should be looking at. Um, so there are all sorts of places that you can look, and I would just Google MS organizations or support organizations and see if there's anything there that lets you know. But I would take advantage of the official organizations as well as social media.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hmm. Yeah, people who write nonfiction have a built-in audience that fiction writers don't necessarily have that they can leverage.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Those were really good questions. All right. Maybe we'll call it done here at 43 minutes. Linda, thank you very much for your time and putting in the
Thanks.
effort here. And I'll go ahead and have this video loaded up on YouTube here within the hour, and I'll send that out to everybody. I'll go ahead and take control back. There's just a couple little notes we want to have for the rest of the meeting here real quick. I'll go ahead and stop the meeting.